Showtime.
Shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community?
Yeah, that clip might or may not be related to all the stuff that we're going to be talking about, because Donald Trump was indicted again this week, and this time at a federal level. So this story has obviously grabbed all the headlines for obvious reasons. And on the other side of that coin, President Joe Biden may be in some hot water after Senator Grassley reported the FBI has information that might incriminate Hunter and the big guy himself in a bribery scheme. We're going to be talking about all this and more on episode 402 of the In the Tank podcast. That's right. Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. As always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal. And joining me today, I've got Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute, back after having a week off. He had family in town. How is it going, Jim Lakely?
It's going great. I am rested, refreshed, and ready. And I still love our new intro to the show, although it does expose to the audience that I basically only have like 3 shirts. And so I'm wearing one of the shirts that was in our little intro montage. So yeah, it's one of my favorites. I love this one.
Yeah, I've got like 4 show shirts that I ever watch. So if you're ever watching a montage of my best clips or whatever, chances are it'll be the same shirt every time. So I feel you. Also joining us, we have Chris Talgo, editorial director here at the Heartland Institute. How are you doing today, good sir?
Doing good, and just want to wish all the fathers out there a happy early Father's Day. Donnie, your dad, happy Father's Day.
Oh, why, thank you, good sir. Yeah, we don't get the constant reminders and commercials nonstop talking about Mother's Day. You know, fathers don't get that. It's one of these things that we got to bring it up at the next patriarchy meeting. I think we really dropped the ball on this one when it comes to Father's Day being totally outshined by Mother's Day. So
I saw like 10,000 commercials for like the month ahead of Mother's Day, and I've seen one commercial, and I think it's from like Home Depot or Lowe's for Father's Day. So
yeah, exactly.
Something's amiss here.
Yeah, make sure to bring that up at the next patriarchy meeting. Those happen bi-monthly.
Absolutely.
So. Also joining us, we have Justin Haskins, director of the Socialism Research Center here at the Heartland Institute. What's going on, Justin? Oh, sorry. Dead air because Justin's not here. Oh, that's so standard. That's 2 weeks in a row from that guy. He's, too much of a big time to show up to our show on time, but he promises he'll be here. So we'll see how long. We're already 3 minutes into the show. My over-under, I'll put it at 6 minutes. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I'll take the over.
Well, he never gives himself a margin for error. I mean,
he does
people don't know, but in the background, we go live at noon Central Time, and his typical arrival time in the studio is like 11:58 and 30 seconds.
That's true. That's very true.
That's how he rolls.
Yes, exactly. Before we get into it, though, I put out that message all the time every week for our audio-only listeners that are probably catching the show on a Friday or later. You can join us a day earlier on Thursdays at noon Central Time, where we are live streaming this on Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and Twitter, and you can join the conversation, throw your comments and questions in the chat. Maybe we'll show your comments on the screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. And you could also help us out if you're an audio-only listener by leaving us a review on iTunes. It'd be greatly appreciated. And for those that are tuning in, hitting that subscribe button, sharing this content, hitting the like button, or just leaving a comment under the video all help break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. We also have that super chat functionality enabled. So if you want to guarantee that your comment is read or your question is addressed, you can use that. Certain limitations apply. So like I said, Jim is back. I basically gave Jim first pick as to what topics that we should discuss, considering that he wasn't here last week. And I was like, Jim, surely, we should talk about the Trump thing, right? Thinking that he'd already have a Jim rant in the chamber. And he responded with, "Oh, that's fine, but I'd rather talk about the Biden scandal." So this is how we landed on this topic, this main topic of kind of talking about both of them and kind of comparing them and the different factors that are in play with this treatment by the media, everything in between. So, Jim, how was your week off? You got some Jim rants in store for us today?
I was really busy this week. Whenever you're off, I'm sure our listeners can relate. Whenever you take some time off of work, you spend so much time playing catch up. I have like 2,000 unread emails. It's even when I'm on vacation, it's very rare for me to not be checking my emails almost every day just to keep on top of it. And so I've been kind of busy and exhausted all week just trying to play catch up here. And I even told Donnie, I usually kind of prepare a couple, I take notes right before the show. And I usually have a couple things put in all caps in my notes to kind of trigger me to go on a Jim rant. And I've been so busy that I'm just going to have to, just wing it. So if you hear and see, if you're watching on YouTube, a Jim rant, this is going to be completely organic. I'm going to I have to get myself riled up as the show goes along instead of getting pre-riled, which is what I usually do in chat messages with the rest of the guys on the show. So, buckle up. It's probably going to be pretty good because, I wanted to talk about the Biden thing because if we don't talk about it, you don't see it on CNN. Chris, you're our resident CNN and MSNBC watcher. Has anybody at all mentioned this, this exposure?
No, Newsbusters did a recent a poll or whatever you want to call it about news coverage of the Trump versus Biden scandal. And guess what? For CNN and MSNBC and the other mainstream media channels, they have been talking about the Trump scandal 95%.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
So if we don't talk about it, or shows like this, I'm sure a lot of our viewers actually watch a lot of other channels on YouTube that will talk about this stuff. But, that's one of the things we try to do on the show. That's why we talk about topics like energy and climate the way we do, because if you don't hear it here, you're not going to hear it at all. So, we're going to be talking about probably the biggest scandal in presidential history surrounding Joe Biden. So stay tuned. We're going to get into that pretty heavy, I think.
Yeah, usually on the show, I have plenty to say about topics that we're going to discuss. I usually pick topics based on a couple of factors: newsworthiness, what I think is important or interesting to cover, and policy angles. Those are kind of like the three metrics that I have in place. And with this main topic, while it is newsworthy and I do find it interesting, it is pretty squarely outside of my wheelhouse. So when it comes to stuff that I pay attention to on a daily basis. So luckily for me, I'm surrounded by a couple of guys and one that's supposedly going to be showing up that are paying attention to this and are keeping tabs on this. So I'm probably going to be relying on you all a little bit more than usual to kind of fill in the gaps for me, because I've kind of has a passing knowledge of these stories just based on some of this prep that I did beforehand. But so let's start off by talking about the Trump scandal. I think that's a good place to start because that's the one that the media is talking about, as you said. So I doubt you'll be able to go online or turn on the news or even pick up a newspaper for a while without seeing some update to the Trump scandal that's been ongoing. Like I mentioned, Trump was once again indicted, this time at a federal level. The indictment relates to classified documents possessed by Donald Trump that were not declassified. If found guilty on all these charges, Trump could face a maximum penalty of $9 million fine. Oh, yeah, and 400 years in jail.
400 years in jail.
400 years in jail. And luckily for Trump, even if he does serve that full sentence, he'll still be younger than Joe Biden when he gets out.
That's true. So, 400 years in prison seems reasonable to me. That seems proportional. Yeah, for sure.
So, Chris, I'm sure that you're probably the most knowledgeable about what's going on with this case. Can you fill in some of the details that I very crudely skimmed over in my introduction of this topic?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to fill in here. So I'm going to kind of start from the 20,000 foot level and just, work my way down. So first of all, in recent modern U.S. history, every single president, when they've left office, they have taken documents with them that the National Archives claims belong to them. There's always been a negotiation period. Sometimes it's a couple of years where they go back and forth, and then they finally come to terms and say, okay, you can keep these things, and these things have to be taken back to the National Archives. Right after Donald Trump left the White House, he took, his documents with him. He was going to prepare for a couple books that he wanted to write, and one of them included letters from foreign leaders. So he took, his belongings with him, and the National Archives, which is really like a library, they went to the FBI and said, you need to go and investigate Donald Trump, because he has documents that we say he can't have, and they have to be back to the National Archives. And Donald Trump and the FBI came to an agreement that they would, go through those documents, and that some would be returned, some wouldn't, blah, 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 blah. What happened was the Justice Department went in and said, no, that's not good enough. We are going to go in there. We're going to raid Mar-a-Lago, and we're going to really, make Donald Trump pay, the price for this, when no other president in U.S. history this has happened to. So that's like one part of this. The other part is that Jack Smith is a political hack. He has been used by the Justice Department to go after Republicans, from Bob McDonnell, the governor from Virginia many years ago, who was actually let off by the Supreme Court. So Jack Smith has a track record of being the left's attack dog when it comes to taking out political figures. Back in the day, Bob McDonnell was thought to be a presidential candidate in the future. That's why they went after him. So what happened was Jack Smith it was named the special counsel. Obviously, Joe Biden had to approve of that. Obviously, the attorney general knew about this too. What they did was they used the 1917 Espionage Act, which was signed, during World War I under Woodrow Wilson. And that was meant to prevent U.S. citizens in particular from giving secrets to our enemies, especially during times of warfare. After World War I, the Espionage Act has been used, primarily during the Cold War for the Rosenbergs, who were executed for giving secrets to the Soviet Union about the nuclear bomb, blah, 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 blah. The Espionage Act has never, ever, ever even been thought about being used against a president for keeping some personal documents in his home, or, in his personal collection after he left the presidency. However, the Justice Department under Jack Smith decided to use the Espionage Act as a way to indict Donald Trump, and they said that he had classified documents, and we keep hearing nuclear secrets and Iranian attack plans and all this stuff. But here's why this matters a lot. The Espionage Act is only supposed to be induced when the person who is supposedly perpetuating the espionage is doing it with willful intent to harm the United States. Donald Trump has exhibited zero willful intent to harm the United States by keeping some of these documents, which, as far as we know, is like a letter from Kim Jong-un, and just some things that Donald Trump thinks belong to him. So really, this is obviously a blatant political attack. And it's never been happened, before. We've never had a president indicted, after he left the Oval Office. So I think that this is really, if you just really want to boil it down to its most simple narrative, this is the sitting president who has sought the Justice Department on his primary political opponent, because Donald Trump is leading the GOP field in the candidacy for the 2024 nomination, therefore trying to, kneecap his potential opponent in the 2024 election. That's really what this is about.
So, Jim, feel free to elaborate on any of those points. And I wish Justin was here, because I did speak to him prior to this, and he had some things to say that if he's not here by the time that you're finished with your statement, I'll try to relay them for him. But that might kind of run counter to some of the stuff that Chris has already said. But go ahead, Jim.
That's okay. Yeah, be prepared. I could go on for 20 minutes. So the longer I go on, the greater chance Justin could get in here. No, I won't go on that long. Yeah, you mentioned, so Jack Smith, the special prosecutor for this, as Chris mentioned, he's a political hack. The Supreme Court, Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the U.S. Supreme Court overturned his conviction of Bob McDonnell unanimously.
Yep, 9-0.
Yeah, that's so. This guy, even if he wasn't a political hack, his ability to get a conviction is so absurd that even the Supreme Court, you know how rare it is for the Supreme Court to actually overturn something like a criminal conviction. It doesn't ever happen. They don't weigh in on stuff like that. They trust the court system to take care of it, and they don't really adjudicate that sort of stuff. But they had to in this case. That's how corrupt our federal court system seems to be these days. But this is third world banana republic stuff. We keep saying that about what's going on in this Biden government, but that's exactly what this is. It is places like Venezuela or Argentina or Uruguay that has the regime in power prosecute their political opponents. It's other countries that want to put their political opponents in jail. Whether you like it or not, Donald Trump is the leading candidate to be the Republican nominee for president of the United States. And on charges, look, this is the best day that Jack Smith, or yesterday, this week is the best week Jack Smith's ever going to have. As they say, the indictment phase is when the prosecution gets to put out their version of the facts, their story that their target is guilty, guilty, guilty. There's no question that this person is guilty. That's what they get to say. But let's see how all this plays out, because if there's anything we have learned during when in regards to Trump and supposed wrongdoing, is that almost every time it turns out to be a bunch of BS, and it's not what it was sold to be by our media, that it is a big nothing burger. You could, from the Russia collusion hoax that our media perpetuated for 4-5 years, it was always absurd, and it's absurd. It's proven to be absurd. This could also turn out the same way. Look, if Trump did something wrong, let's get down to the bottom of it. But the idea of threatening him, look, the Biden regime and their sycophants in the media and the left in this country want Donald Trump to die in jail. They think that is the proper punishment, not for this stuff. They want Trump to die in jail because he won the election in 2016 and beat Hillary. They want him to die in jail because they have Trump derangement syndrome, that they invent crimes that he supposedly committed so that he will spend his time in jail. Our politics is completely broken. No matter what you may say, I'm old enough. I remember the 1990s. I was in my 20s, and I remember the impeachment of Bill Clinton for not having sex in the White House with an intern. Oh, whether it's sex or not, all that kind of stuff started happening in the 90s. He was impeached for lying under oath. It was an actual felony. He wasn't arrested. He was impeached and not convicted. He got to keep his law license eventually. All this stuff. Nobody on the right wanted to see Bill Clinton put in jail. They wanted him removed from office for malfeasance. But they've already tried that. They've impeached Trump twice on BS, and that wasn't good enough. So now they want him to rot in jail. It's sick. And I know there's a meme going around of Hillary Clinton. I don't know if it's real or not, where she's wearing a hat and it says butter emails. But yeah, Hillary's emails. She had 33,000 classified documents, emails on her server. We only learned that she had conducted all State Department business on a private server and not on the government servers at the end of her term, actually after she was already out of office. I believe. It's been a while since I had to look all this up, but I believe that's true. Mm-hmm. The intent of all of that was to make sure that nobody could ever see what she had been doing as Secretary of State. She destroyed that evidence when it was under subpoena, when there was a criminal investigation going on. She destroyed it all. She had her aides, and then she had it bleach bit so that it couldn't be forensically examined. She had her aides literally destroy BlackBerries with hammers. Nothing happened to her. James Comey comes out and just talks about how no reasonable prosecutor would ever take up this case. Yet, supposedly, Jack Smith, a reasonable prosecutor, has taken up this case with the potential of putting Donald Trump's corpse in jail for 380 years. Let's just be generous and say that Donald Trump will survive another 20 years. They want to make sure his corpse is imprisoned until the 25th century, for crying out loud. Maybe they'll cryogenically freeze him and he could wake up and be president in 2538 or something like that. But look, So Hillary got off scot-free. James Comey got off scot-free. James Clapper, it's a felony to lie under oath to Congress. He got off scot-free. There was an attorney in the FBI who lied to the secret Foreign Intelligence Services or Foreign Intelligence Court, lied on documents to frame innocent people who surrounded Trump and have them spied on illegally. All those are felonies. Nothing happened to him. He lost his law license for like 6 months, and now he's back. He's probably a CNN contributor by now. Certainly Comey and Clapper are. All of these FBI agents who didn't just conduct misconduct, but committed felonies. Not a single person was held criminally accountable for any of that stuff. Nobody goes to jail if you're a Democrat and you work for the regime. If you oppose the regime as either a private citizen or as a politician, you are subject to go to jail. That is not America. That is not the way our justice system is supposed to work. This whole thing is broken. So whether or not Donald Trump is guilty or not, this whole thing should be thrown out just for the sake of saving some semblance of integrity in our federal justice system.
Let me just quickly point out that this picture that Andy has pulled up with Hillary Clinton wearing a hat that says "but her emails," if that's the one you're talking about, that is clearly photoshopped, because that is Hillary Clinton like 40 years ago.
That is Hillary Clinton 40 years ago. But the sentiment remains.
No doubt. I just, anyone thinking that that's what she looks like today needs to
Fake
be
news.
corrected.
One other very important matter that should be mentioned too is that Donald Trump was president of the United States. He has the ability to declassify these documents. Hillary Clinton was never president of the United States and never will be president of the United States. Therefore, she never had the ability to declassify those documents.
Yeah, and if you're going down this but what about, a street here, you also have to bring up Joe Biden, because however many months ago, 6 months ago, something like that, when Joe Biden, they started finding all these documents like in his garage and all of that stuff. And just like what Chris said, Joe Biden wasn't president then when he got those documents. So I thought when that story started breaking and you were hearing these updates, another batch of documents were found, this time in his garage or whatever. I was like, well, that's the last time you're going to hear about this Trump story, because if they've got Joe Biden on the same stuff, how are they going to pursue?
Well, to make matters even worse, let's remember that Joe Biden took documents when he was a senator and when he was vice president and had them hidden in his garage, in his office near Chinatown, at the Penn Biden Center, and in his both of his vacation homes. Hunter had access to those records. Some of those records were about China, and also they were there for years and years and years. Donald Trump, this is all happening in record time,
Oh, sure.
So it's not as if they were just sitting out at the pool at Mar-a-Lago where, a tourist could come by and just pick it up and be like, oh, look, this is our nuclear secrets. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, let me just play a little bit of the devil's advocate stuff. So this is, again, me relaying this on behalf of Justin. So Justin, if you watch this in the future, forgive me if I mangle some of this stuff, but he basically told me, this was yesterday, me and him were talking. He's like, yeah, I was looking into some of this stuff, and I feel like they've got Trump dead to rights. He's like, I was looking at it, and he's like, by the letter of the law, it's like, he didn't declassify the stuff. He had the ability to, but he didn't do it. And he had the stuff. And then what makes it different than the Biden stuff and the Hillary Clinton stuff is apparently that there are some recordings of Donald Trump talking with a biographer, like someone that's going to write us some biography on Donald Trump. Where he was basically saying yeah, I have these documents and I probably shouldn't have them, or I shouldn't have them, but they exonerate me on A, B, and C. And one of the examples was supposedly a document where some aide for national defense or something like that went to Donald Trump and was basically arguing we should go to war with Iran. And Donald Trump said no and killed that idea or something. Mm-hmm. And he was keeping that document, even though it was classified, keeping that document for proof in the future that he wasn't some warmonger and that he was actually trying to shut down wars and all of that, which, I'll applaud that. That's fantastic. But Justin is making the case that because of all of this, they have him dead to rights. Now, so let's just allow Justin to hang there as the as the devil's advocate for a minute. But how would either of you, maybe Chris, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of legal scholars, Jonathan Turley in particular, say that that is just not true. There's many reasons why. First of all, I think that I forgot to mention this. This is all a civil matter. This is not a criminal matter. So the fact that they are, because the Presidential Records Act is a civil matter, so this shouldn't even be a criminal matter in the first place. But even, so what what they are alluding to is that he took these documents and he had them, but once again they're charging him with the Espionage Act to do the Espionage Act. He had to have gone and tried to harm the United States. That is the letter of the law. Just having that document for his own preservation, just because he wants to, remember it, that is not committing the Espionage Act. So once again, they've twisted themselves into pretzels trying to, make this a criminal prosecution when there was no crime in the first place. It is not illegal for Donald Trump to have documents that are classified in his possession after he left the presidency. And one other thing, and I think this is a very important matter, the United States government overclassifies beyond any belief. There are so many classified documents. There are billions of them. Anything can be considered a classified document. And it's pretty pathetic that out of the thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 documents that he had, they only were able to find 31 that they could charge him with. So that goes to show that they were really, really, stretching to try to say, oh, this document means that you are, committing espionage. Donald Trump having that document in his possession does not in and of itself commit espionage. Had Donald Trump gone to the Iranians or gone to a adversary of the United States and tried to peddle that for his own, for his own, whatever, then it would be considered a criminal act. Now, that never happened.
Yeah. So to me, like the biggest thing here is like Donald Trump had full ability to declassify all of these things, even these 31 documents that you mentioned that he could be, potentially charged with or whatever. Like if just on his way out the door, he just like signed the piece of paper, like I'm declassifying all these, and brings it and puts it in the trunk of his car and drives away. Like then none of this would be an issue. And if that's the case, then what are we even talking about here? Like, is this really just like a semantics issue?
It is because there's actually questions as to what it takes to declassify a document from the President of the United States. There are people that say he can actually just think it, and once he thinks it,
boom, there you go.
It's declassified because there is no actual like written process for the president, because the President of the United States is the President of the United States.
Yeah, and that's
he's
another...
not subordinate to a bureaucrat in the National Archives.
And that's another difference between like the Hillary Clinton thing, where like she doesn't have the ability to do that. She like Jim said, she ran all of her Secretary of State business through the secret server in her bathroom or whatever. So it's like she didn't have the ability to do this. So it wasn't a semantics issue. So, if you want to go by like letter of the law type of stuff, and you were saying that he breached the law, all right, great. Let's charge him. We'll give him a slap on the wrist. What do you think, Jim?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the argument that the Presidential Records Act. Let's just say it's actually a criminal act. But the idea that these laws about classified documents apply to everybody but the president. The president is the only person who has the ability to declassify as an individual, and that every I heard this. Robert Barnes has a great podcast. Him and Viva Fry on YouTube. Definitely check that channel out. He was talking the other day about how, none of this stuff applies to the president of the United States. All the documents are under his control when he's president, so this is a bit of a semantic thing. And so maybe, there is some violation of the law here, but it is so minuscule compared to other stuff. Look, I'm glad you raised Justin's points, because I knew he would say something like that. And he and I would get into an argument. I'm not going to yell at you, Donnie, like I might get voluminous to Justin. But yeah, I hear that. And I hear the idea, look, we have to be better than this. By the letter of the law, technically he did commit felonies, and I guess we should have a trial and do all this stuff. I don't care about that anymore. I used to care about that. Those arguments do not carry any water with me anymore. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where our side, where people who believe in justice and the rule of law and the Constitution are supposed to follow every rule. while the other side smashes us in the face by weaponizing our FBI, by corrupting our justice system and punishing their political enemies. We don't live in the world anymore where adherence to the law and playing by the rules works. All it does is get the people who believe in maintaining that society crushed and jailed. That's what happens. Look, this is like when January 6th was happening, right, at the Capitol. And we were actually podcasting, I believe, when that was going on. And I said, guys, I have a hard, it's bad, but I have a really hard time getting emotionally tied up about all this and upset about what's happening at the Capitol after the summer of love, where cities burned to the ground and people died and nobody ever got arrested, where there was no accountability for anybody. So this is kind of my mentality is very much the same in this regard. I have a really hard time getting upset about Trump, allegedly violating, the letter of the law of the Presidential Records Act when everybody on the other side, and Joe Biden, I didn't bring it up in my original rant, Chris, and you did. Joe Biden has classified documents sitting in a box next to his Corvette in his unlocked garage. And yawn.
Where his crackhead son Hunter stayed for years at a time.
Right. And that's not actually the Biden scandal we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about something extremely serious, very, very soon here. But
let's jump to that.
We could jump into that, but it's like, we'll see how this all plays out. The history of all these things, all these accusations against Trump is that it's all fluff and hype and BS. And then we'll actually see how this works out, because, you will go broke betting that the left has the goods on Donald Trump, because they've never had it.
Donnie, can I just wrap it up with one other thing?
I want to keep this all in context. But the next thing, but go ahead.
This relates to the Alvin Bragg case, where the Alvin Bragg case, he took a law and then he interpreted it so wildly just so he could prosecute Donald Trump. They're doing the same thing here, because if they were to consistently apply what they're doing to Donald Trump, then they would have also been doing this to Joe Biden, to Mike Pence, to Barack Obama, to George W. Bush, to Bill Clinton, who had secret tape recordings in his sock drawer. So it's the double standard. It's that blatant double standard. It's the Justice Department saying, we're going to go after this guy for because we want to take him out of the presidential campaign field for 2024 because we view him as a threat. That's what this is about, and that's all it's about.
Right.
I wish we lived in a country where holding Donald Trump criminally accountable for these crimes would actually make a difference and would actually make a statement about what our justice system in this country is about. Prosecuting him and putting him in jail for 400 years actually makes the opposite point about our justice system in this country, and that is utterly and completely politicized and corrupt. That's why I don't support any of this, to be honest.
Right. So happening simultaneously is a story about, potential major corruption involving the currently sitting president of the United States and his son and a foreign corporation. We were talking, about bribery, extortion, cover-ups, really salacious stuff, yet nobody's talking about it. And I'm talking, of course, about the recent revelations by Senator Grassley saying that there are tapes potentially revealing a bribery scheme involving President Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Or as Chris so lovingly put it, his crackhead son. So that seems like page one stuff. But when I was looking for links for this week's show, I only found articles from right of center news centers like Fox or Washington Times or Newsweek. I literally at one point, and maybe this is still true, but this was yesterday, I was looking up links. I literally typed Grassley, Biden, and CNN into the search bar, hit enter, and nothing came up. Not one thing was being mentioned by CNN about this. Do we have? Oh no, see, that's May 4th. That's old. That's not it.
Well, hey Donnie, can I just go back a teeny bit in time? We should also remember that the indictment was announced on the same day that James Comer and his committee actually released that document that the FBI had been withholding for years, showing that there was a money trail from Ukraine to the Bidens and to Joe Biden. So is it coincidence? I think not. And now the fact that CNN and all these other channels, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, are just completely blacking out shows that they are carrying water for the Biden administration. And it's even worse because, and I know that we already covered this, when it came to the Trump case, They refused to even show Donald Trump's speech after the arraignment because they said we don't want to have misinformation aired.
Oh, right.
So really, what they're saying is we're only going to give you the Justice Department side of the story. We won't give you any sort of other side of the story because we're afraid that you might change your mind. Which goes to show, I think, how like fragile their position is, because I think the vast majority of Americans, and I guarantee you, every single person who's watching this podcast completely sees through this for what it is.
Yeah, well, so and you can fill in the gaps or correct any kind of errors I make, because I'm just kind of going off the top of my head here with this story. But basically, that there was this information apparently that the FBI was sitting on in regards to Joe Biden and this bribery scheme and his son Hunter Biden and all of that. And
not only sitting on, withholding, refusing.
Well, no, I'll get to that. I'll get to that
okay.
because nobody even knew that like this existed for the most
just
part.
Like they did with the laptop, just like they did with Hunter Biden's laptop.
No leaks about this. This is a huge story. No leaks. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, until a whistleblower comes out from the FBI and says, like, there's these tapes that exist, with Joe Biden and this bribery scheme and all of that. So because of a whistleblower that came out, there was kind of a stink was raised by some people in Congress that were saying, like, oh, if this exists, we want to see it. So the FBI was like, no, we're not going to let you see it. And they're like, what? We're like representatives of the United States. We should be able to see this stuff if it has to do with the president, the sitting president. And the FBI is like, all right. A few of you can see it. You can't have it, but you can come in this dark room and check it out.
It gets worse. They had to threaten the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, with contempt of Congress.
Oh, that's
right. Only then, when he literally was facing prison time, did he say, "Oh, damn, you got me, final." And he heavily redacted it. So it just goes to show,
so okay, Grassley and a couple of others, you get to come in this dark room and watch this, and we're only gonna play it once, type of thing, and then you guys got to get out, right? So then Grassley watches all of this and comes out and's like, there's some pretty terrible stuff in here. I think we should open up a larger investigation. And Grassley's not one of these like people that are just written off. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Jim, because I'm not a politic guy, but he's not one of these like written off as some crazy MAGA extremist or anything like that. Like, he's a fairly establishment guy, right? So he's coming out here raising all of these flags or whatever. CNN doesn't care to even print one story about it. Like, it just seems
that is so maddening,
a little bizarre.
Yeah. Chuck Grassley has a reputation of being he's like the whistleblower's best friend in the Senate on the Republican side. I mean, when I was at the Washington Times, almost 20 years ago now, I worked on stories in which Grassley's office was involved in exposing what whistleblowers have to say about some, different agencies in the federal government. So like Chuck this is not like going to, some radical, wide-eyed, this isn't that. This is Chuck Grassley's a serious man who deals with serious issues. And if he was not convinced that this is a big deal, he wouldn't say anything about it. And he's obviously saying a lot about it now because it is a huge deal. I mean, look, if you've ever wondered, I've always wondered, everybody always wondered, how the hell did Joe Biden get so damn rich after a lifetime of public service? Mm-hmm. He's got houses. He's got a house on the beach in Delaware. He's got a house over here. He's traveling all over. He's living a nice, great lifestyle. I think now we know how he got rich and how a lot of politicians get rich. They lean on their influence that they were given temporarily by the voters, and they use it in corrupt ways to enrich themselves. That's what's being alleged right here against Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden, that they were each given $5 million by a oligarch for Burisma, the energy company in Ukraine. And the purpose of that was to make sure that the company, they basically was buying protection for his company. And obviously, as everybody knows, I mean, we should have grabbed this clip today, and you don't need to find it, Andy, it's fine. But everybody kind of remembers Joe Biden because he's a moron. He's a braggadocio idiot. He says on tape that, hey, I had that prosecutor that was looking into my son's company fired. And I said, you're not going to get that $1 billion until you fire that guy. And I got about 6 hours left. And if he's not fired by the time I get on the plane, you're not getting any money. He bragged about using public funds to establish an outcome that benefited him, obviously now, and his son, company Burisma. And again, nothing happens. CNN doesn't do an entire expose on that. Donald Trump got impeached. Actually, this is another great thing to remember.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's second impeachment, or was it the first impeachment? I lost track, Chris. I can't remember.
The first.
I think it was the first impeachment.
First.
He got impeached for getting on the phone with Zelensky and saying, hey, I heard about this corruption stuff with the Biden family. It'd be cool if you check that out.
Yeah.
That was an impeachable offense to the Democrats. And why was it impeachable? Because they were going after the ruling class, going after Joe Biden, going after a Democrat. And that's what the ironies on these things are just through the roof. But look, $5 million. And actually the guy, what's his name? Zlochevsky, I think, Zlochevsky. I don't know. I can't really handle all of these Ukrainian names, but anyway, the oligarch, right? He basically said this was protection money. This was a bribe, and again, he has recordings, 15 recordings of him talking with Hunter Biden about how they're going to pay this bribe, and 2 recordings with Joe Biden, the sitting president of the United States, about how he's going to make sure that the payment gets to the Biden family. Now, the FBI has been sitting on this for a very long time. Again, we would not know any of this if it wasn't for a whistleblower in the FBI coming to Chuck Grassley, the best friend of whistleblowers in the United States. We wouldn't know about any of this stuff. And as one of the commenters, John Z, had mentioned in the comments as you were going through it, Donnie, this document that was redacted all over the place is not a classified document. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to sit in there was no reason for them to sit in a dark room, a secure location to read this. It wasn't a classified document at all. It should not be redacted almost at all, and it should be released publicly. It should be put on the internet. You shouldn't have to just only submit it to congressional investigators. So this whole thing is a big cover up. So it's obviously very safe. Go ahead.
Also, the reason why they had these 17 recordings, I don't know if this came from the whistleblower or something, was basically for like potential extortion reasons. It was like, if this guy finds himself in a tight spot,
that's right.
He's got these 17 recordings over here, so it's just like magnitudes worse than like the Trump situation that Chris said that we're paying 99% of our attention to, and the other 1% of attention that we're paying to is not this.
But he saved the tapes. He called it an insurance policy. And if I was that guy, I would actually I might publicly expose myself, or if he is ever eventually publicly exposed, he should come out publicly and say, just for the record, I will not be killing myself in prison. I have no suicidal tendencies.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And Jim, you kind of mentioned this, but yeah, the mind blowing aspect of this is that Donald Trump was impeached for the issue that relates directly to this, the Ukraine quid pro quo, or whatever they're calling it, all based on Trump trying to get Ukraine to investigate some of the corruption involving Joe Biden. And wouldn't it just be so ironic if Trump was right from the beginning when it comes to all of this stuff? Well, ironic isn't probably the best word for it. Instead, I'll say, I don't know, revealing a swamp so deep light completely ceases to penetrate its depths. Like that's the level of absurdity that we're at right now. It really is banana republic stuff, as you mentioned earlier. When you've got the sitting president trying to throw his political opponent in jail over a borderline semantics issue, all while the intelligence community is seemingly hiding evidence that could incriminate the sitting president, evidence that would also vindicate said political opponent, all while the media establishment turns a blind eye. It would all be just so crazy if I wasn't just already completely jaded by the political system already. Now I read through all of this stuff and say, it's Thursday.
Well, yeah. So, you can't be more jaded than me. If you get more jaded than me, Donnie, then there's no hope for anybody in humanity. So don't go full Jim on this one.
Well, the thing is, I'm so jaded that I can't even muster up the strength to rant and rave about it like you do. To me, it's just like I laugh about it because I don't know what else to do. So,
but one of the things to keep in mind here is that Joe Biden was vice president of the United States when this bribery scheme was allegedly happening. So he was using his position as vice president to enrich himself while he was vice president. A lot of politicians are smart enough to wait until they get out of office to actually accept
right.
He did it while allegedly he did it while he was vice president. But it's obviously safe to assume that the FBI has been sitting on this and has been slow walking this investigation, if they've investigated it at all. This is again the same FBI that pursued every bullshit allegation against Donald Trump and his family with like 1,000 agents swarming upon anything that they could find. This is the same FBI that lied on on sworn documents to courts to spy on people, but they've done nothing apparently about this, and that's one of the things that the senators are trying to get to the bottom of. It's like, are you guys? This looks pretty serious, and this is really solid evidence. Have you done anything? Yeah, I don't think we've done anything. There's no way they've done anything, and they intended to sit on it forever.
So
there he is.
So Justin's here about 39 minutes after the over-under that I set to 6 minutes. So
glad I took the over on that.
Justin, there is no way that I am opening you up into this conversation, or else we'll have zero time to get to my secondary topic. But if you can limit it to 4 minutes of just any comments in regards to the amount of attention that's being, because this is the avenue that we've gone down, the amount of attention that's being paid to this Trump scandal versus the amount of attention that's being paid to this Biden scandal. Let me have it. But I swear, if you engage in some argument with Jim that takes 25 minutes, I'm going to kick you off this podcast.
Don't trigger me, Justin. Don't trigger me. Keep it civil.
Unfortunately, I was planning on triggering Jim, and I guess I'm not going to be able to do that. And that's why Donnie said that, because he knows that was my plan. I think that we are in truly one of the most dangerous moments in American history. Like I like legitimately from an American domestically, I mean, not from external forces, but internally, we are on the verge of absolute chaos because of how there's always been bias. It's been unfair for a really long time. Conservatives have felt that for a really long time. And you can go back to Hillary Clinton and Benghazi and then the email stuff and then Obama and all the, cover-ups and everything and the treatment of Trump and all of that matters. But I don't know that we have ever seen, we haven't, not in any time in modern history have we seen in the United States of America a sitting president being investigated for corruption, not well, but there are people looking into it, with a mountain of evidence using his own government to investigate his chief political rival, a former president who had been spied on by the administration for whom Joe Biden, the sitting president, was the vice president, while he was doing corruption and all of that. And the fact that he himself committed the very same crimes that he's now accusing the former president of committing. I mean, it's so egregious and so absurd. It borders on it's almost unbelievable. And I think that there's truly a lot of people who just wouldn't believe it. So I mean, I think we've already seen this massive lack of trust happen for so many millions and millions of Americans, especially conservatives, but people in the middle as well. And if they actually put Donald Trump in jail, and I don't have time to go into this, but I think they are going to do that. I think he's going to go to jail, not forever, not for 400 years, but he's going to go to jail. And if that actually happens, and Joe Biden is somehow able to skate free on possibly, a $10 million bribery, charge, essentially, if he's able to skate free on that while his chief political rival who's running for president against him is sitting in prison, I don't know how America survives. I mean, I hope it does. We're a resilient country, but that is Soviet Union. That is Mao's China. That is the worst of the worst kind of situation. And I don't know how we can survive it. I really don't. I'll leave it at that.
That's great. That is great. Yeah, I kind of used you as to play devil's advocate a little bit by making some points on your behalf while you were absent. But I assured everyone that you were largely in agreement with us in the absurdity of all of this stuff.
It does look like Justin and I would not have gotten to an argument
Nah,
today.
not that much. Not
Not
that
that much.
All right, so there is a secondary topic that I want to jump to, but obviously this is going to be a newsworthy thing, and you stay tuned to our podcast on a weekly basis. Surely we'll have updates, and we'll talk about kind of the latest developments in all of this. But real quick, just literally like 2-word answer, 3-word answer here. Do you think that the Biden stuff investigation will have legs, or is it just going to result in some politicians standing up in front of Congress and yelling a lot, and then that's it? Jim?
Go ahead, Justin.
Go ahead, Justin.
No, go ahead, Jim. I got
I only want 2-word answers. Don't make those words stretched out over 5 minutes.
No, I think Justin's right. It's much more likely Donald Trump will go to prison than in a single investigation, or there will be a single significant accountability for what Biden has done. The media won't even ask him. It's like you say all the time you never talk to your son about his business, and he won't even be asked about that by the press, let alone have any any legal trouble.
How about you, Chris? What do you think? Does this Biden investigation thing have any legs?
If I had to bet money, I would say that Joe Biden will get off scot-free and Donald Trump will be put in jail. Although I think that the appeal process, and I think that he probably won't actually serve the term.
All right. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I think that it is highly likely that Donald Trump goes to jail, and I think it is highly unlikely that Joe Biden
suffers any
has to deal with any
Well,
consequences.
Well, I have so will there be? Will there be riots in the streets? Can you imagine what happens to the streets of America if Donald Trump is imprisoned?
Real quick, that noise that Andy played is actually they're putting together the new national anthem after all of this plays out, and that was the first clip of it. So, all right, so we've got less than 10 minutes. Boom! I want to bring up this because, as constant listeners know, I am very fascinated with new technology, futurism stuff, Black Mirror type things. And there was a couple of stories that came across my desk recently that seems like we are really heading full bore in this direction. So the thing that I want to talk about is the concepts of deep fakes. And if you're unaware of deep fakes, don't Google it, because you'll find some really crude pornography type stuff, I'm sure, if you look up deep fakes. But it's essentially the idea of superimposing somebody's face, recreating somebody's face over someone else's. You see it been done in movies and TV. And also there's like an audio version of it where you can kind of replicate somebody's voice. A popular story that went around several months ago was Joe Rogan. They synthesized all of his audio from his endless hours of podcasting and was able to create a digital voice box for Joe Rogan and have that voice box say anything you want. These are the concepts around deep fakes. And there's always been the concern that this radical, very revolutionary type technology could be abused for political reasons. And we're starting to see that now. So the first thing that I want to bring up is Paul Vallis. So here in the Chicagoland area, you've heard Chris talk about this. There was a fairly contentious election recently for Chicago mayor between Brandon Johnson and Paul Vallis. Paul Vallis, both of them being liberal, but Paul Vallis being a little bit more on the conservative side of that spectrum. And in the heat of this pretty close election, there was a tape that got spread around on Twitter that made Paul Vallis seem less palatable to your average voter. So, Andy, if you have that police deepfake video queued up, go ahead and hit play on that.
These days, people will accuse a cop of being bad if they kill one person that was running away. Back in my day, cops would kill, say, 17 or 18 civilians in their career, and nobody would bat an eye.
So this is audio, supposedly, of Paul Vallis saying this very seemingly crude thing about how, like, oh yeah, back in this day, police would kill civilians all the time and no one would care. And it was being spread around saying, like, wow, look at this. This guy's radical. He's not going to hold police accountable and all of that. Well, it turns out that was fake. That was not his real voice. That was not even selectively edited. That was a deep fake voice generated of Paul Vallis with the sole intention of making him look bad. But before this was figured out, and before the Paul Vallis campaign could address this and send out some statement about it or anything, it was seen on Twitter like 100,000 times. And maybe that's not enough to completely outright win an election, but it could skew it a couple of points, especially if if that's an issue that relates to you. And I'm just going to, because of just the lack of time, I wanted to speed through some of this stuff before getting your guys' comments. But there's another thing. And before I bring this one up, I am a Ron DeSantis fan. So I bring this up not to take a dig at him or be critical or anything like that. But Ron DeSantis posted a campaign ad that was basically like attacking Donald Trump. And in it, they used AI generated artwork showing Donald Trump like literally embracing Fauci, right? And it was basically saying that like, oh, he doesn't have any good judgment. Look, like in the background, you got a picture of him like hugging Fauci. It was a fake computer generated, AI generated image that they used in this campaign to make Trump look bad. And then the last thing that I want to mention, this is all kind of came across my desk at the same time. There's this Wall Street Journal article. Andy, if you want to pull this one up, it's kind of interesting to see. But it says the headline of this is, these campaigns hope deep fake candidates help get the vote out. So it talks about, and if you're watching, you could have seen the pictures with Trump embracing Fauci. But so this article talks about, the Wall Street Journal article talks about candidates in the South Korean presidential race that have created digital replicas of themselves for the sole purpose of trying to appeal to young voters. So obviously a human being is limited in how many campaign stops that they can make in a single day. Well, now, once we get technology really rolling, you don't have to be limited. So this video that's playing for those audio-only listeners right here, or there's a video playing, the audio-only listeners should know, but the video watchers should be able to see this. This is a deep fake version of the political candidate in South Korea, where it's able to say anything. It's able to hear questions and respond to them in live, whatever, like as if it's live. And there's a couple of quotes in this article that are just fascinating. One of them is kind of a joke. It's talking about the head of the campaign of this guy. And it says, "We want voters to see the human side of Yoon." And it's like, oh, really? The human side? You mean the computer generated deepfake version of him? The irony of that, whatever. It's just, I thought it was funny. But the thing about that makes this even crazier is that they can like program him to talk with a little bit of different styles. This is a little bit more of a stodgier, conservative type in South Korea's election cycle, whatever. But the computer generated version of him, the deepfake version of him, allows him to talk with a little bit more youth-friendly terminology, where he's got the slang down a little bit more, and he's a little bit more personal or whatever. And there's a couple of quotes here talking about, it says one of these potential voters, saw the guy in real life and didn't really think too much of him, but he finds the deep fake version of him actually very personable and likable and relatable, and it's like basically more likely to vote for him. So,
how do you do, fellow kids?
Yeah, right. But like it's true, and I was bringing some of this up to Justin, and it's like I could see this happening. Like, this is already happening, right? This is happening in South Korea. This isn't a Black Mirror episode. This is happening in South Korea. I could see this happening with Joe Biden, like this next election cycle. You could send him out there, a deep fake version of him. It probably wouldn't be as ridden with dementia or anything like that. He doesn't have to go to sleep at 7:00 at night or anything. He can go out there and actually say some slang that's hip to the kids nowadays, instead of saying stuff like hip or malarkey, So like, I could totally see this happening. And it brings up a whole bunch of issues, ethical issues. So Chris, I actually want to go to you first on this. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is something that should be, and you could address any of those three stories that I brought up, but like specifically about this South Korean one, like, do you think that this is something that should be like banned from the political theater here in the United States? What do you think?
I'm going to take a different approach on this. Politicians have been pandering to their audiences for a very long time. I remember when Hillary Clinton was running and she went to the South and she had this like Southern twang and she was talking about hot sauce and, like collard greens. So I actually wonder if Hillary Clinton was the first one to do this, because that was not Hillary Clinton. I swear to you, that was that was an early version of this. Okay, now take that and, put it aside. To be totally honest, I mean, I do think that this is scary, because then this is also could cause people to question like those 17 tapes. Is that really Joe Biden's voice? Is that really Hunter Biden's voice? Is it really a deep fake? So this is going to call into question like just, video evidence, audio evidence. I think we are at the precipice of a pretty like scary time, when now, it used to be videos are always true, audio is always true, and now it's not the case. So I don't know. I think this is going to be, pretty scary stuff. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg here. And just think about how this could be used, to I'm sorry, that person's,
I'm muting that.
So I mean, this could be used to make your political opponent look like he said or did something that didn't ever happen, or that So this is scary stuff. Not I don't like it one bit.
Jim, what do you think? I mean, I just imagine that a Joe Biden that's running off of supercomputers is going to be a little bit more effective out there on the campaign trail than the current guy that we got not even able to walk on a stage without tripping over a sandbag.
I would like to imagine an AI Joe Biden glitching out like the lady on that's in the train station or airport or whatever in Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just starts glitching out. He goes, "Come on, man. Come on, man. Come on, man. Malarkey. And so it will eventually be exposed. But look, that's fine. It's actually something to worry about for sure. And I think actually I am prepared, and I think a lot of people in America are prepared to not take everything they see at face value. Again, there's the CNN watchers and the MSNBC watchers who just take everything that they hear at face value. I take virtually nothing at face value. I didn't take these charges against Trump at face value. I actually don't even take these bribery allegations against Biden at face values. I want to see more evidence of it. And I think a lot of people, it's easy to be fooled by AI, especially, and it could affect elections. And, dirty tricks and politics go together like chocolate and peanut butter. So, you just got to be aware. You just got to keep your eye out. And you're going to be trusting your gut a lot more than trusting the media.
Yeah, well, see, and I think that's actually a good point that you bring up, but I'm going to take it into a more cynical direction, because I think that this is going to give people, once this becomes more of a thing, this is going to give more people a license to discount reality or believe in myths. So I think like the divisiveness that you see between like the left and the right now is going to get like even wider, because they'll be like, oh, here is proof of Donald Trump, saying this thing. And it's just like, the people that want to believe one side of the narrative just won't believe it, even though it's real or even though it's fake. And the people that want to believe it will believe it, even though it's fake, So I don't know. I think it's going to even make things even more divisive. No, Justin, we are already 3 minutes long. I'm going to give you a final word on this. What do you think about all this?
So I have so much that I could say about this, but what I think guaranteed, this is regardless of what the sort of long-term issue is with this and how big of an issue it is over a long period of time. I think almost guaranteed there will be at least one extremely important sort of nation changing in a way moment that this kind of technology will create. Like it will create a crisis at least one time. And that one time will probably involve something happening right before a presidential election that either shows a person, a candidate at the last minute doing something that is not accurate, kind of like the Brandon Johnson type thing, except at a presidential level where everyone's paying attention and it's happening at the very last second, right? And it swings the election one way or the other. Or the opposite, like a Hunter Biden situation where something comes out that is a real video or real audio of a person talking, and it comes out right before, and all of the social media and all the mainstream press or whatever, especially if this is about a Democrat, comes out and says, nope, that isn't true. That's not real. And the candidate just denies it and says, nope, that's not me. I didn't say that, or that's a deep fake. And if the press all says it's a deep fake and the candidate says that's not real, that will be the narrative and people will believe it. And then later on, we'll find out, no, actually, it'll take a year, but we'll find out later on, no, that was real footage. And by then, it doesn't matter. It's too late. We've moved on. But I think that there's at least one of those, because it's too
potent of a
elections, tool. Yeah, it's too. It would be too easy to do one way or the other, and you get at least one of those before people become skeptical. I don't think we're at where Jim is at. Most people, I think most people are at a point where they would buy it, one way or the other, and it's just a matter of you have to go through that painful process before people start. It's kind of like back when people actually used to get fooled into sending, wire transfers to Nigerian princes. And it's like, then people realized, oh, you can't do, now it's like a joke. Literally nobody would do that, but people did get scammed from stuff like that. So I think it takes one of those big moments. And so you get one of those, and I'm willing to bet that the left will use it because they love this kind of stuff. I don't think it's a mistake that Paul Vallis was the victim of that the last time around and not the socialist candidate in Chicago. Right. And I'm willing to bet you anything, it will happen and it will benefit Democrats more than it will benefit Republicans.
I think that there are some probably listening to this podcast that think like, oh, we're already doing this. Like, this is already happening. And they're probably, I'm not going to like hold it against you if you have that belief. And the image that comes to my head is that one tape of like Joe Biden talking in the front lawn of the White House and his hand goes through the microphone, or at least it looks like it. Like, how do we know that wasn't a deep fake version of him or something already?
You know what, actually, and just real quick, like a last point about that is, think about the foreign policy, side of it, right?
Oh, sure.
And like how easy it would be. It would be really hard to get away with doing this kind of thing in America over and over and over. You couldn't, like I said, you get one really good opportunity to do it, but could say, I don't know, like the CIA do that in, Pakistan to swing some election a bunch of times. Are they going to be able to like figure that? I mean,
or start a war.
Yeah.
Or how about China using deepfake to invade Taiwan? I mean,
without a doubt. And
the possibilities are endless.
Right. And how would you ever, if China showed a deepfake video of some Taiwanese military attack on some Chinese ship somewhere, how are we ever going to know? How would we ever figure that out? If once the technology gets really good, how would we ever be able to figure it? We couldn't. And so I'm not saying that will happen, but it seems like that's maybe even a bigger threat.
Yeah, this being involved in election stuff is like totally secondary compared to like other really worse implications of it. That's absolutely correct. All right. Well, we are already a little long here. So I want to thank everyone for tuning into this episode of the In the Tank podcast. Join us every week for a new episode. Like I said, for those audio only listeners that are catching the show on a Friday or earlier, you can join us a day earlier on Thursdays at noon Central Time, where we are streaming this live on Facebook and Twitter and Rumble and YouTube. And you can join in the comments and throw your comments and questions in there. Maybe we'll show your comments on screen. Maybe we'll address your questions on the fly. I did see that super chat come in from Christine. Almost forgot about it. Thanking us for the show. We really do appreciate it. It is a great way to support the show. Other ways to support the show that won't cost any money is just hitting that like button, subscribing if you haven't already, sharing this content, or just leaving a comment under the video. All helps break through those big tech algorithms that prevent content like this from being shown to more people. Also, if you'd like, you can follow us on Twitter at InTheTankPod, or if you want to send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, feel free to email us at inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
At J Lakely on Twitter, at Heartland Inst on Twitter, and always visit heartland.org.
And Chris Talgo, what do you have to pitch today?
Just go to heartland.org. We got a lot of good stuff up there, a lot of stories. We've got, just tons and tons of material that's, really interesting, and highly recommend you go there and check it out.
And the deep fake version of Justin that we conjured up in the first 45 minutes of this podcast. How can the fine people find you?
At Justin C. Haskins on Facebook, Twitter,
Or in the Matrix.
Yeah, or in the Matrix. Also, check out justinhaskins.com. I just launched Justin Haskins.
What? Oh my
I
gosh.
know. I know.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.